Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and we are on the last episode for The Alchemist, going over pages 150 through 171. And boy, what a journey it has been. We're going to finally conclude this story today, and it's going to end the way I kind of thought it would end, in that I kind of figured somehow the ending would tie up the beginning and like everything would basically come full circle is kind of what I was predicting out of all of this. And as you're going to see, that kind of turned out to be correct. Let's just jump right into it, like where we have left off from last time. The Alchemist's wager. So if you remember, Alchemist and Santiago are traveling through the desert and they get stopped a couple different times. So one of the times that they get stopped is by the one of the warring tribes, and they don't let them pass. And all of a sudden, the alchemist starts mouthing off a little bit. He says, "Oh yeah, we got this treasure. Santiago here, my buddy Santiago here is an alchemist, and he could destroy this whole camp if you want to, and hell, if he doesn't, you can have our lives, do with us as you please. If not, we go our merry way." And Santiago's all of a sudden like grasping at straws here. Like, how? I'm not an alchemist. How do I destroy a camp? Oh my gosh. He kind of meditates on this a little bit. Starts to talk to the desert. Next thing you know, he's talking to the wind. And that's kind of where we left off. Is this conversation that he's having with the wind. He needs the wind's help. And the wind is kind of apprehensive a little bit, doesn't really want to help Santiago, or really kind of says, well, what you're asking for is not really possible. Santiago wants to become the wind, or maybe not become the wind, but he wants to utilize the wind. That's for sure. He needs the wind to accomplish this task. And the wind says, hey, buddy, you're not really, you can't be the wind. You're a human. You're a man, boy. And Santiago says, well, that's where I think you're wrong, wind, because we're all made by the same hand. And we're all made up of the same, we're all created by the same creator. And little atoms, molecules make up all of us. So it's not that far-fetched here what I'm asking for. I need to uphold my end of the bargain with this military tribe. And you're saying I can't do it, but I'm saying I can because, and he uses this word here, or this sentence, when you're loved, you can do anything in creation when you are loved. And I ask you guys if this is possible. The wind doesn't really know anything about this. He's talking to the wind. The wind doesn't understand the concept of love. But he's going to talk to the sun in a second. The sun does. And Santiago does. But is this possible? When you are loved, you can do anything in creation. And I think to a certain extent, I think this is true. But I wouldn't use the word love. I would use the word, mindset. If you're in the right positive mindset, you do feel like anything is possible. Like, especially when you have momentum, you're on a roll in life. Yeah, you do feel like you can do anything. Now, when you're on a roll, when you're in that positive mindset, you could be in love. And love can cause you to get in that mindset. Absolutely. You do feel different when you are surrounded by people who care about you, who love you, who want what's best for you. So I do agree with Santiago on this point. So they keep talking, and all of a sudden, I think Santiago starts to get the point that the wind can only do so much for him. What he really needs now is the sun. So on page 153, the wind starts to blow, sky fills with sand. This is all in order to get through to the sun. All right, so the wind is going to form some sort of, I guess you could call it like a channel, like a direct communication channel to the sun. The commanders in the military tribe, all of a sudden they start to notice this. And they kind of want Santiago stopped. But the tribal chieftain wants to see it continue because he knows that he is seeing greatness performed here. He says that he's seeing the greatness of Allah, and he respects this act. Yes, Santiago is out to destroy the camp, but he wants to see Allah in the act. He knows that by the completion of this act, that he would have seen Allah put his stamp on the world, eyewitness account. And it's bigger than that. It's bigger than the camp. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is God in the flesh making things happen right now. And I don't want to stop that. This is God's will. Everything is created by the same hand. It is written. I think these are kind of the thoughts that are going through the chief's mind here. So all of a sudden, Santiago starts to speak with the sun, and how the sun, they're talking, this is page 153. And the sun is at an interesting position because the sun, with its rays, with its light, brings life to earth. And it's so far above everything that the sun actually says that it does kind of understand love, and it understands this soul of the world that has been mentioned throughout this book. And the interesting thing about the sun is that it's mentioned here by Santiago, or in the book by the author, if it were any closer to Earth or any further away from Earth, everything would die. Think about if it was any closer to Earth, it'd be way too hot. If it was any further away from Earth, it'd be way too cold. So it's kind of a perspective, kind of makes you think like, wow, is there a greater purpose to all of this? Was this by design? And religion was a very big theme throughout this whole book. So let's continue. Santiago mentions that when a personal legend is realized, you have to transform into something better. He mentions this kind of on page 154 when they're talking about the days of creation. The sun mentions 5 days, but Santiago mentions 5 days. The sun says, but there was a sixth day. And Santiago, this is where Santiago gets into the fact that the sun is above everything else. The wind is on the same playing field as Santiago, but the sun is on such another peak, another higher level. It can observe everything right in front of it because it stands so high up in the sky out in space that it's wise. It knows about love. It's observed all of these things down on earth. And it's said, Santiago says, if there hadn't been a sixth day, man would not exist. Copper would always be copper. Lead would just be lead. So each thing has to transform itself into something better and to acquire a new personal legend until someday the soul of the world becomes one thing only. I think absolutely. The thing about when you set goals and you achieve them, it does make you want to set more goals because you feel good accomplishing things. You just want to keep the ball rolling. Absolutely. When you realize your personal legend, hey, time to find another one. And remember, the crystal merchant had spoken of this, that he was afraid that if he achieved his dream of going to Mecca, that he wouldn't have anything else after that. So he never ascribed to achieving that goal for him. He always wanted to have it unclaimed, unachieved, because then he could always push towards something. Well, no, you go achieve that goal, and that's going to make you want to do something bigger, better, something different next time. We continue on to page 155, and I titled this slide, Why Alchemy Exists. This is kind of building off of what Santiago was just saying about personal legends. You know, everyone's going to be in search for their treasure. Once they find it, they're going to want to find something else now. They're going to want to be better than last time. So it's said here, you know, this book is called The Alchemist. We meet a character called The Alchemist. You're supposed to change substances into gold, you know, play around with different metals. And this was kind of the secret, this whole thing. In this whole thing, remember the Alchemist says everything has a personal legend. We talked about this last time. Even like any metal in your hand, like lead, it's got a personal legend. You shouldn't interfere with any other personal legend. Just focus on your own. So it is said that lead is going to play out its role in the world until it reaches its personal legend, so to speak, until the world doesn't need any lead. Then it's going to turn into gold. Then it's going to want to better itself. That's how things turn. That's how different metals turn into gold. Their purpose becomes fulfilled. And then they metamorphosize into gold. That's the secret. You got to try. Remember, the alchemist told that to the Englishman when they first arrived at the oasis, and the Englishman found them. Said, well, did you try? Did you try to make it? No, keep trying. Keep trying. Keep pursuing that personal legend. And in that pursuit, now you make somebody else better. Yeah, I remember my high school football coach, we had a slogan for my senior year, and it was lead, follow, or get out of the way. So when you lead, everyone around you has the chance to become better. I think didn't we talk about this with A Man's Search for Meaning as well? Like, you gain meaning in your life when you help somebody else find theirs. So I think we did talk about this, the example of the football player who does everything in his power to become a better player himself, but he only works out alone. He has he goes to a separate gym from all his other teammates. He's very much a lone wolf. And yes, he's going to get better. And yeah, he'll probably be All-American, he'll probably go to a good college. But the team is only going to get so far. Now, if that same player is working out with this team, ensuring that everybody around him is getting better, then the whole team maybe wins a championship. And it's not like he is at any disadvantage because of that. He gets better too. So just different routes, different perspectives on how to obtain, your personal legend for yourself, but also help somebody else obtain their personal legend. That's the power of love. Santiago talks about, the author writes here, love makes us strive to become better. Because now it's not just about you. Now it's about somebody else. Page 157. So just to be clear on what's happening, Santiago takes a couple days, goes out in the desert before this this wager takes place, before he tries to destroy the camp. So he speaks to the desert, then he speaks to the wind. Now he's talking to the sun. Think about the transformation that happens going from desert, wind, sun. Desert, you could almost say, is, that's where people live, out in the desert. But then if you're talking about the wind, that's something completely different, something that you can't really see, but yet is still effervescent around you, but it's spread out throughout the world. Then you talk about the sun. The sun is on its whole different level. It's observing everything from up above. And then there's even another level from that where they describe it in here as the hand that wrote it all. Page 157. Let me go there right now. The hand that wrote it all. So probably meaning God is what Paulo, I think, is talking about here. So it gets to a point when the sun gets him, so the wind helped him get in communication with the sun. Then the sun helps him get in communication with the hand that wrote it all. And then the hand that wrote it all of a sudden has a direct line to Santiago. Santiago feels like a rush of positive energy, like a current of love rushed from his heart. Santiago begins to pray. It's something that he's never really experienced before. But what he's experiencing is the soul of the world and the soul of God, which was always Santiago's own soul. It's always inside of you. And with this power of love, you can perform miracles, is what he says. Next thing you know, the wind gets stronger, and it does almost destroy the camp. Things get, the camp gets, kind of torn apart a little bit. Santiago even gets moved to the far side of camp. The general is quite impressed and provides them an escort to where they need to go. He just saw Allah in the making, right here in the camp. He just witnessed it firsthand. So the Alchemist and Santiago won that wager. It's safe to say. So they continue on. This is on page 158. They reach a Coptic monastery. And this is where the Alchemist is going to tell Santiago, from here on out, I can't be with you anymore. The journey is going to be yours alone from here on out. And Santiago is a little bit disappointed. You can imagine if this happened to you, thoughts of maybe imposter syndrome start to come over you. Where, hey, I don't think I can do this alone. I really need you here with me, helping me, but this is it. I mean, Santiago is only 3 hours away from the pyramid. He's just so close. He's so close. And I think the Alchemist always had this as a plan. He made Santiago really work for it, really reach down deep into his soul to find out what he is capable of, and really put some pressure on him with that wager at the military camp. And the Alchemist found out that, and he actually mentions it, a few pages ago, that, this is the perfect, disciple. This is the perfect, assistant guide to carry on the Alchemist's name, so to speak. So the Alchemist has nothing more for him. From here on out, it's all Santiago. So that's why he's kind of leaving him. But before he does that, they go into the kitchen of the monastery, and it's interesting. The Alchemist, we finally get to see this, him perform the the art of alchemy, if you will, and he turns some lead into gold. Santiago wants to learn about it. He's interested, he just saw a miracle take place right in front of him. He wants that money, and the alchemist has to tell him, this is his personal legend, the alchemist, but it's not Santiago's. But he wanted to show it to him because he wanted to show him it was possible. Right? When you're in pursuit of your personal legend, there's no telling what you'll do. Right? There's no telling what's possible. So by showing Santiago his personal legend, he shows Santiago that, hey, you keep working and pursuing, good things will happen. You'll finally reach that destination. So with that gold that he just makes up in this pan, he pays it to the monk to take some and kind of thanking him for taking in Santiago. And then he also pays Santiago back, which I am very thankful for. Because again, when the alchemist made this wager with the military camp, he kind of told them oh yeah, this is Santiago. He's an alchemist. He can destroy the camp. He has some gold in his backpack. We brought it for you. And it's like, dude, what? You just let him know he's got gold. They're going to confiscate that. Now Santiago didn't have any money, but thankfully the alchemist paid him back. And it's interesting here, the monk kind of, he doesn't really want all the gold. He kind of tells the alchemist, hey, this is way too much. You're giving me way too much. And the alchemist tells the monk, hey, you know what? Don't say that out loud, because next time God might be hearing and they might give you less of whatever it is that you are looking for. And that, God will think okay, this guy he has enough of this particular thing. So, in fact, let me try to find that for you guys so I can making sure. Don't say that again. This is on page 160. Don't say that again. Life might be listening and give you less next time. Because the monk had said, this payment goes well beyond my generosity. So he tells him, don't say that again. They might give you less next time. And so Santiago hears this and he kind of doesn't really say anything about it. He just takes take what the defense gives you. Take what life gives you. If it's giving you this much money, hey, just take it. And then they end here, this little section on page 161. Alchemist says that everything that happens once can never happen again. But everything that happens twice will surely happen a third time. It's interesting. Where have we seen this in the book? Everything that happens once can never happen again. But everything that happens twice will surely happen a third time. You could maybe say this with the gypsy. People that have specifically helped Santiago, that realize that he is out to go to the pyramids, realize his personal legend, the gypsy. Then you had the old Salem king, right? Then you had the alchemist, right? So, momentum. It's just, once it happens twice, it's bound to happen a third time. The snowball starts gaining traction down the hill. All of a sudden it turns into a big boulder of a snowball. It's no longer a ball, it's a snow boulder. It's probably the best way to put it. So one more story before this alchemist leaves. This starts on page 161, and he talks about a good man that had two sons. And I'm gonna paraphrase the story, or what I tried to do here on the slides, because it's kind of a longer story. And the good man had two sons. One was in the military and one was a poet. And, he kind of has a dream that one of his sons the words of one of his sons would be repeated throughout the world for generations. So automatically, when you hear that, you're probably thinking the poet, right? He's writing poetry, beautiful, using beautiful language. That's probably what would get repeated. The son who was writing for a living. And then the man dies. And an angel comes back to ask him, if he has a wish that he may grant. And the man wants to see his son's words in the future. So they go to the future, him and the angel. And the verses he hears people talking and speaking aloud in the world, this is in the future, are actually from his son in the military. So that the father's kind of surprised to hear that. And then the angel tells him about, one of his servants was falling ill, so the son goes to a rabbi that can cure the illness. And it's actually named here that it's the Son of God. So you can kind of think that this might be a reference to Jesus, especially you're going to a rabbi. Jesus was Jewish, Son of God. Jesus was the Son of God. And the son asks Jesus, I'm going to call him Jesus here, only speak a word and my son will be healed. This is on page 163. My Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word and my servant will be healed. So the alchemist, the central theme, the lesson here, the alchemist says, no matter what he does, every person on earth plays a central role in the history of the world, and normally he doesn't know it. So if you just strive to a purpose that's greater than you, you're going to be remembered in the world. It's kind of, I did a little bit of research on this because I didn't quite understand what the alchemist was trying to say here. But basically, the world is so big, but if you just focus on your part, your small part, don't worry about anybody else's personal legend. Worry about yourself. Well, that will send ripples throughout the world. You're going to end up being remembered. I think that's kind of what the alchemist was getting at a little bit here. And gosh, I forget the name. I saw a little blog post somebody wrote about this. And that's kind of where I got this idea from, was a purpose. If you pursue this purpose greater than you, you're going to be remembered for it. All right, so let's continue on. He's getting pretty darn close to his treasure. And how do you know this? Well, because it's said that treasure will be where your heart is. Remember the alchemist talking about this while they were traversing the desert? You have to listen to your heart. Your heart's going to kind of lead you in the direction you need to go. So the heart whispers to him, be aware of the place where you are brought to tears. That's where I am. That's where your treasure is. So he's still traversing the desert, climbs up a dune, and wow, boom, he sees the pyramids. And immediately he weeps, prays. Immediately he thanks God. And he knows that his treasure is right here. The pyramids are there. He's weeping, probably because of, he's finally at his destination after all this hard work, after all these miles traveled. He's learned all he's needed to know, and he's experienced everything he might have dreamed a shepherd to experience. Think about how far he's come. All of a sudden, he sees a scarab beetle, and immediately when I saw this, and they got a picture here, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, that's an omen. That's another omen. And so what does this mean? Well, Paulo writes here that the scarab beetles are a symbol of God. So something good. You got to admit that that's probably a positive omen. Well, just so happens that after he sees that, some intruders approach. He's starting to dig around for his treasure, and then all of a sudden these several figures approach him at night while he's digging for his treasure. And these figures are refugees from the tribal wars that were taking place. And they tell him that they're looking for money. So they take Santiago, they kind of beat him up. They find gold in his bags, and so they force him, hey, he's probably got more treasure. So they kind of force him to keep digging for whatever it is he's digging for. And he tells them why he's digging. He tells them on page 167. And he tells them, I'm digging for treasure. He had twice dreamed of treasure near the pyramids of Egypt. And this is interesting because remember, the Alchemist shares a story. Or excuse me, he didn't share a story, but they experienced something when they were traveling through the desert together when a bunch of people stopped them and they were searching through their bags. They find that the alchemist has the masterwork, the elixir for life, the elixir of life and the philosopher's stone, and he kind of tells them, oh yeah, this can be used to turn lead into gold, and they kind of laugh at him. And the alchemist tells Santiago, if you tell people about your treasure, seldom are you believed. And I kind of related this to casting pearls among swine. And like, nobody's going to appreciate that. Why try to convince anybody, So I think Santiago inadvertently, probably knowingly did this, tells him, hey, I'm looking for treasure here at the pyramid. He's, because he's probably tired. He's emotional. These guys have beat him up. He probably sounds a little crazy. And he's telling them the truth, right? But they don't believe him and they leave. Isn't that kind of funny? And we're getting like right here to the end of the book. And one of the intruders, before they leave, he tells Santiago that, hey, man, you got to give this up because one time I had a dream to travel to Spain. That was a typo, my fault. I had a dream similar to yours, but in my dream, it told me to travel to Spain, look for a ruined church where shepherds sleep, where sheep sleep. That's where my treasure was, but I gave it up. I didn't want to go do that. Santiago now knows where the treasure is. And it wasn't at the pyramids. It's back home. This is kind of where I saw this story going, somehow tying back to the theme of the real treasure was back home the entire time. Santiago gave up. He could have gone into the ministry, to the priesthood back when he was living with his parents, but he wanted to travel the world. He always kind of thought the grass was always greener on the other side. He goes to the pyramid searching for his treasure, but the real treasure, what God is trying to tell him is it's back home in Spain. And the crazy thing is, though, if Santiago had not known, if he had known where the real treasure was, just back in this church, I believe this is the same church in the first chapter too. Like one of the first pages of this book, he's in that rundown church with the sheep, right? If he would have just found it right then and there, well, okay, yeah, there wouldn't really be a story, but he would not have seen the pyramids. He would not have experienced, the gypsy, the Salem king, the people who took his money, the crystal merchant, the Englishman, the alchemist, Fatima. There was treasure along the way. So he goes back, he finds a chest of gold coins back in the spot of that ruined church, takes out Urim and Thummim, the two stones that the Salem king gave him, remember? Puts them in the chest, takes the gold coins, does like an even kind of exchange there, and he remembers that he still has to give 1/10 of his treasure to that gypsy woman. So he has to still go do that. While he's kind of thinking about all these things, the wind, and I wonder if this is the same wind that he talked to, if it's all the same wind. The wind brings him a scent of perfume. And I remember when he was talking to the wind earlier, back when he was at the military camp, he talks about how the wind could bring him the scent of a woman. In fact, let me see if I can find that. Yes, page 150 here. He asks the wind, "Help me," the boy said. "One day you carried the voice of my loved one to me." So he's talking about Fatima there. So now at the end of this book, at the end of his journey, the same wind is bringing him a scent of perfume, which immediately he kind of recognizes as Fatima's. And he says, "Hey, I'm coming." Because remember, Fatima wanted him to go pursue his personal legend. Go find his treasure. And then if you come back to me, I'll be here waiting for you. If it was meant to be, I'll be here waiting for you when you come back. And that's where he's going to go. Wow. And that, my friends, is the end of the book. Very good book. Very allegorical, to real life. Lots of very interesting lessons in this book. I think my favorite was, don't be so concerned with the oil in the spoon, or don't be so preoccupied with the external world that you forget about the oil in the spoon. I like that one. That was the story that the Salem king told him. Most importantly of all, don't rush anything. Life's a journey. I even forget this sometimes. Like, I kind of want things like hurry, 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 like want things done quickly, fast. I've got coding projects that I'm working on right now that I've struggled with. I'm trying to build this little survey app, and I was having a lot of trouble with the routing. I'm not using a framework for it. I'm just using pure JavaScript with the Spring Boot backend, and I could not get the routing to work. I have no clue why. And, just a day ago, I made a huge breakthrough with it. Finally got the URL to change, and essentially I'm trying to create a single page application. I know this is not really Alchemist related, but finally made a breakthrough after, it had been a couple weeks. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think it's important to do sprints. You got to be aggressive, fast at points, but don't lose sight of that long-term goal. And that's the book. Guys, thank you very much if you made it this far, were reading this book with me. It was a real treat. And now it's going to be on to the next book. Stay tuned for that. I'm going to have to make an announcement. I have an idea of what I want to read next, and I kind of want to take some time off. And maybe we'll start the next book just in 2021. I'll get some little bit of time off, Christmas, New Year. And I will let you guys know, though, in a video on what the next book will be. But thank you very much if you got this far. Let me know what you think about The Alchemist, what your thoughts are, if you have any different opinions. And that's going to do it. This has been Chee-Tash. My name is Chris. Thank you, and bye.